Greetings, superior beings. Greetings, supreme being. Welcome to Universal Peace Television. Today I have the honor of presenting to you all Anonymous Reviews. American Possible Withdrawal from Iran Nuclear Deal PRESSTV.IR WW3. Before reading the article, first a more important message. To prevent World War III and create universal peace. 1. Leaders are advised to avoid attacking any countries, especially innocent civilians, and declare a ceasefire when possible. 2. Promote or mention universal peace. 3. Make weed tea, eat weed or smoke a peace pipe if absolutely necessary. 4. Be prepared. Radiological water filter, storable food, just in case. Solving Iran situation. To prevent a world war over Iran, Iranian leaders are advised to allow inspections and all of their facilities as agreed upon in the nuclear agreement. American leaders are advised to avoid any type of attack on Iran to avoid a world war with its ally Russia. American leaders are advised to first have an agreement with ally countries of Iran before even thinking about bombing the facilities that do not allow inspections to avoid a third Jesuit world war, mutually assured destruction in a 7-year nuclear winter which would be colder than the next ice age. Iran cannot pose any threat to Israel with its Iron Dome and other missile shields. Israel has nuclear weapons which it may use to retaliate. Keep missile shields ready. Get rid of the people responsible for the World War, possibly the leader of the Jesuits, Adolfo Nicolas. Instead of the innocent civilians they want you to kill, take over, end the war, create the non-fictional utopian society ASAP to speed up finding ways to control the 7 factors that control aging during our lifetimes. They are always the ones to tell you who your enemies are, but they're never the ones to fight and to die. From the song Life's in the Balance. This would be the third Jesuit World War. Watch out. Nepiophilia, also called infantophilia, is a subtype of pedophilia. It is used to refer to a sexual preference for infants and toddlers, ages 0-3 or those under age 5. American Possible Withdrawal from Iran Nuclear Deal Saturday, August 26, 2017 2:31 p.m. Home Iran Nuclear Energy. Diplomats from Iran, the P5+1 group of countries and the European Union pose for a group picture at the United Nations building in Vienna on July 14, 2015. Diplomats from Iran, the P5+1 group of countries and the European Union pose for a group picture at the United Nations building in Vienna on July 14, 2015. Nowadays, the talk of U.S. withdrawal from the 2015 nuclear deal with Iran is not exclusively circulated within foreign policy and diplomatic circles. It's out in the open making the rounds. Analysts have extensively written on the issue. In a bid to render a clearer picture of the current state of affairs, I would like to predicate my analysis on political and legal arguments. The political will on the part of all parties to the negotiations was ultimately embodied within the multilaterally negotiated Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, which significantly drew upon the success of its predecessor, the Joint Plan of Action. As attested to by influential individuals and organizations, the JCPOA is a historic deal bringing one of the most contentious proliferation crises of the first decade of the 21st century to a satisfactory end. The NPT has been considered as the cornerstone of the non-proliferation regime, according to which the International Atomic Energy has been tasked to monitor and verify Iranian side of the bargain. The IAEA has issued 6 reports confirming Iranian compliance with the deal thus far. The European Union and other relevant international organizations staunchly support the implementation of the nuclear deal, and have applauded it as a collective achievement of the international community which cannot be reduced to a mere bilateral deal between 2 specific parties. The foreign ministers of Iran, the P5+1 group of countries and the European Union pose in Lausanne, Switzerland, on April 2, 2015. From the political standpoint, the top echelon of American administration is rather packed with neophytes lacking the fundamental rationality desperately required for political leadership. and from the legal point of view American possible unilateral exit would constitute a violation of international law and the United Nations Security Council resolution. Even if the U.S. opted out of the nuclear deal, she would still be obliged by international law and the United Nations Security Council resolution to uphold and refrain from undermining the deal. Any perceived action in this regard is arbitrarily a legal violation which will cost the U.S. dearly in terms of her long-term interests. PRESSTV Iran can resume 20% enrichment in 5 days. Iran's nuclear chief says the country would be able to resume the enrichment of uranium to the 20% level within 5 days if need be. Veteran diplomats learn an abundance of lessons through the vicissitudes of their professional life and look fondly on their past experiences and, with the benefit of hindsight, might even laugh at their deeds. However, inexperience, as a stage in natural evolution of a professional, is one thing, and political callousness is quite another. Sometimes a perniciously disastrous phenomenon. The statesman not very well versed in the art of politics and without proper education proved to share 4 basic characteristics. First, their reactions are driven by emotions and instincts fueled by a deep-seated hatred for their predecessor whom they blame for the scorched earth they have left behind. EU Foreign Policy Chief Federica Mogherini, L., and Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif posed before a joint press conference in Tehran on April 16, 2016. Second, they usually don't understand the rules of the game, and even if they do, they reduce them to mere red tape, cumbersome and superfluous. Since they cannot appreciate the benefits accrued from the international system, they tend to flout the established rules of behavior and embark on their own erratic track. Third, the most mundane and widely known facts of the political world seem quite new to the unexperienced eyes of the newbie. Thus every day is a day they make discoveries. Fourth, political novices are immensely influenced by their circle of friends, folk and family. The 4 traits mentioned here were not concocted to fit the U.S. president. In addition to his idiosyncrasies, the American president is particularly notable for exhibiting the 4 qualities just mentioned. He will eventually learn, and hopefully before it is too late, that underneath the apparently simple glamour of foreign policy lies an overwhelmingly complex process. He must appreciate the fact that his predecessor's animosity towards Iran, if not more intense, was on a par with that of his, and that had they been able to fully dismantle Iran's nuclear program or even raze the whole country to the ground, they would have gladly done so. However, it should be borne in mind the U.S. power does not make it invulnerable. The U.S. president has quite recently learned and claimed that Iran is violating the spirit of the nuclear deal. It is fairly obvious that the whole concept of spirit of the JCPOA is new to him, only to have been learned from his aides in the recent month. Now he is under the delusion that the newly found leverage enables him to level charges against Iran. If this was not the case, he would not have adopted such parochial approach to this sensitive matter which is profoundly intertwined with ungoverned by the law of treaties. How come a party who, in principle, does not hold a shred of respect for a multilaterally negotiated agreement, and expressly calls it a stupid deal and unabashedly reveals his intentions of leaving the whole establishment, accuses the other side of violating the spirit of this very same deal? If the U.S. president detests his predecessor and is keen on obliterating his legacy, he will be better off seeking this adventure at home, and not projecting his hatred to foreign policy. Foreign policy and international law are predicated upon fundamentally different logic from that of national laws. International law takes an impartial stance on changes of government and in such situation is disinterested in nations' domestic affairs and takes continuity of commitments as a principle. PRESSTV Iran can return to pre-JCPOA state in hours. Rouhani Iran warns that it can restore conditions that existed in its nuclear industry before the nuclear deal if Washington continues to violate the agreement. All international commitments are, in principle, based on the principle pacta sunt servanda, agreements must be kept. His background in business must give the U.S. president a clear understanding that the nuclear deal is a fait accompli from which you cannot walk away under false pretexts. The U.S. power and relevance in international system makes the president's actions all the more important as it could potentially lead to irreparable catastrophes. Legally speaking, unilateral withdrawal from the JCPOA is not permissible. As sovereign entities, countries could make legally unjustifiable decisions in contravention of international law. However, flouting the law does not connote or condone a state of lawlessness. From a purely legal perspective, the mechanisms embedded within the JCPOA and the United Nations Security Council Resolution 2231 make withdrawal impossible. The JCPOA is not merely a pact or a simple agreement, but an international system writ large. Legally speaking, the JCPOA maintains a hierarchy of rules and regulations. The JCPOA contains primary and secondary legal provisions, and its implementation is supported by a verification mechanism, dispute settlement, withdrawal, and ultimate annulment. Furthermore, under the UN Charter, the JCPOA has been endorsed by a Security Council resolution. Such mechanism bears close resemblance to national administrative and legal systems. The binding force of the JCPOA derives not only from the will of the contracting parties, but also from the Security Council Resolution 2231. The JCPOA is endorsed as Annex A to the Security Council Resolution 2231, which, according to international law, is an integral part of the UNSC resolution. Therefore, not only the parties to the JCPOA are bound by it, but also, given the UN members' pledge to accept and adopt the decision of the Security Council under Article 25 of the UN Charter, the Resolution 2231 is binding upon all UN member states, which in turn commits them to the JCPOA. Even if the US invokes its domestic mechanisms as the reason for shirking its commitments enshrined in the JCPOA, she cannot evade its commitments under the Security Council resolution. The strategic loss the US would suffer by ignoring a Chapter 7 UNSC resolution is beyond the ken of current US administration. Just take a moment to appreciate the gravity of such an act. All other Security Council members will soon follow suit in adopting an irresponsible approach and will disregard their obligations and enforcement regulations. The file photo shows a meeting between Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif, 1st R, and former U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, 1st L, in Vienna. The JCPOA commitments in a nutshell would be for Iran to take confidence-building and transparency measures, implement the additional protocol, put a cap on its enrichment level, and reiterate that under no circumstance will Iran seek nuclear weapons, and in return, the other party pledges to terminate nuclear sanctions and commit to cooperate in civil nuclear projects. To violate any of these two sets of principles, under internal or administrative pretexts or for any other excuse, will relieve the other party of its duties under the deal. Thus, any attempt on the part of the U.S. to derail the JCPOA or withdraw from it and forfeit implementing obligations under the deal will, in principle, bear upon the commitments of the other party as regards transparency and confidence-building measures. This is the political ramification of breaching legal commitments. On the other hand, if we look at the bigger picture, we could discern its integral elements, namely the text of the JCPOA and UNSC resolution, binding statements of the contracting parties upon finalization of the deal. Thus, it is easy to figure out that from a legal point of view any withdrawal from the deal would be illegitimate without the consent of the Security Council. The JCPOA invokes the national laws of each party as a basis for carrying out their commitments on a national level and cannot serve as a substitute for their international commitments, specifically those set out under a UNSC resolution. Thus, any measure taken by all UN member states, not just the US, aimed at undermining the JCPOA is a violation of international law and inconsistent with UNSCR 2231. PRESSTV Iran MPs to meet on U.S. threats against JCPOA. A senior Iranian lawmaker says a key parliamentary body is set to discuss a response to future U.S. threats against the 2015 nuclear deal. To exacerbate its already poor JCPOA implementation record, the U.S. seems bent on undermining the JCPOA or even withdrawing from it. Not only would this be a violation of international law, but also this would provide Iran and other parties to the deal with reasonable grounds to take countermeasures. The Islamic Republic of Iran was one of the parties to the JCPOA. However, a Security Council endorsement of the agreement took matters beyond the negotiating parties and anointed it as an international agreement by which all members of the international community are bound. Any unilateral counter-JCPOA measure by the U.S. will be to the detriment of both Iran and the U.S. and deals a devastating blow to the international community, as they won't be able to reap the economic benefits from the otherwise lucrative business with Iran. Unilateral acts on the part of the U.S. or any other nation, or even in interpersonal relationships for that matter, are allowed to the extent they won't encroach on others' rights and benefits. The transgressor must be held accountable. In the end, U.S. President's inexorable hostility towards Iran and a negotiated deal, endorsed by the international community, does not jive well with any legal or political logic. The heart desire remains that the U.S. administration paid more attention to the facts on the ground than stubbornly bent on emotional and illogical reactions. Nations and statesmen, especially those with the political inexperience of a parvenu, are prone to embark on irrational undertakings or commit strategic errors. If the push comes to shove, however, Iran will not sit idle and will take necessary measures to rise to the challenge. PRESSTV.IR Iran not allowing inspection violation nuclear agreement based on what the BBC writes about allowing inspections, additional protocol to IAEA safeguards agreement, and on what the Financial Tribune and other sources write about Iran quote never tolerating U.S. inspections at military sites and quote it is clear Iran is in violation of the additional protocol to the IAEA safeguards agreement by not allowing inspections of its military site. Based on the BBC article, Iran is in violation of the nuclear agreement by not allowing inspections of their military site if Iran does not allow inspectors to quote access any site anywhere in the country they deem suspicious and quote. If the sources and information provided by these mainstream media outlets is reliable and accurate is another matter. IRGC Commander. Iran will never allow inspections of military. TheTower.org 14-82017. Soros protesters caught LARPing in Charlottesville. The Alex Jones channel bombshell connection between Charlottesville, Soros, CIA. The Alex Jones channel 18082017 bad video, nothing about the connection. Super puppet Putin, Zionist Jesuit Freemason, delete the elite 8 months ago 14,429 views. Putin calls U.S. parasite on global economy, YouTube. Putin saying it's Russia's fault is like blaming everything on Jews. YouTube. German Jesuit report shows 205 allegations of sexual abuse. YouTube. 16082017 dailystormer.com has been removed. dailystormer.com no site configured at this address. Anonymous outro. Recovery begins with non-compliance. Test everything you learn. No blood for cancer oil. Stop spending on defense, they are big boys now. Spend it on controlling the 7 factors that control aging instead. Fuck jihad, fuck homophobia, fuck racism. United we stand. Unite with us. Radiological water filter, storable food, peanut butter, rice, peace, etc. Colloidal silver. Use probiotics in silver. Air cleaner with ionizer. Cloudbusters. Preventing beats curing. Treat the cause, not the symptoms. Hydrate, breathe, masturbate. Depart from evil and do good. Sex is the best thing. They pretend it's bad, it's the satanic inversion. When people die, their bodies do not go to heaven, they go into the ground instead. YOLO. You only live once. Transforming reactive to proactive behavior begets lasting fulfillment. Rathberg quote. Do not pray nor hope. Go for it yourself. Anonymous quote. Okay, thank you all for watching. Be safe out there, safety first. Love and peace, Anon.